I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. Then I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray. I walked by the back side and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, hers strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took them their check, and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what virgin on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She blank stared me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's laws, she is correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here. Recently I got engaged to my amazing fiancée Amy. I was the happiest I have ever been when Amy said yes, and was nothing but excited for our wedding. We started planning the venues, the dates, and the invites. When talking about who to invite, we both agreed to invite out coworkers as we have worked in our respective jobs for years and like them all. As I checked that off the list, Amy spoke up and said everyone from my job can come except my work friend Tally. Tally is also one of my close friends, so this surprised me that Amy didn't want to invite her. She has met Tally multiple times and there didn't seem to be any issues. When I asked why, she said she just doesn't like her and finds our friendship uncomfortable, saying she thinks that Tally is the type of person to try to sway taken men and be the center of attention. After talking some more to see where she got this idea, it turned out this was based on nothing but Tally's looks, as even Amy admitted that Tally is always very kind to her. But still, Amy is adamant about Tally not going and said that she makes her insecure. Amy is a beautiful woman, so I don't know why she feels this way. I told Amy that if it makes her feel comfortable not having Tally at the wedding, then that is fine. But before invitations go out, I wanted to speak to her privately to let her know to save embarrassment. Amy agreed, and that was really that. We didn't speak on the matter after. A week or so later I went into work and Tally started to ignore me, only really talking if it was work related. I was confused as it isn't just her, our coworkers have started to ignore her and acting strange to me. So I contacted her BF, only for him to be sarcastic on the phone. I asked what the problem was when he asked if I actually didn't know what happened. He then filled me in. Turned out a few days earlier Amy came to my work on my day off with invitations. I had no idea she even made them yet. And handed everyone an invite in front of Tally, then saying to Tally, "You aren't invited, women like you aren't welcome." Which has sparked everyone suggesting she is my other woman. Since then she has been harassed by some guys at work and shunned by the women. She is now looking for another job. This pissed me off and I apologized profusely as I didn't know. When I got home that night, I confronted Amy about this. She denied it at first, but then told me she did it, but it is now not an issue because she's quitting her job. I flipped on her, saying how she clearly didn't trust me to say and that she crossed a line doing all this behind my back. She didn't see the problem and got upset, asking me why I'm so mad, me responding, if we are really going to get married. Get your insecurities in check and grow up. I stayed at a friend's since but have had texts from Amy, her friends, and her mother saying for this and that Amy doesn't deserve this treatment. I have made many attempts to speak to Tally privately to find out what was happening prior to contacting her BF. She brushed me off by saying she either had work to do or that there was nothing to talk about. No one would really speak to me, so I contacted her BF as a last resort. Her BF says he is going to pass on to Tally what I said to him on the phone. The wedding is currently on hold, that is also why I'm staying at my friend's. Need some distance to figure stuff out. Nothing has or ever will happen with Tally, no feelings, nothing adult, absolutely nothing. Tally is happy and in love, her boyfriend is someone I also consider a close friend. I was happy with Amy prior to this. And Tally is more like a sister to me. Unfortunately, due to what Amy has done, all I can really do is damage control. Of course I am planning to explain to everyone what has happened. I do not want Tally to be going through this. She is a genuinely kind person who does not deserve any of this. Back in November 2018, I was arrested at work in front of my boss and coworkers. It was the most humiliating thing I've ever experienced. I later learned at the police station that I was being charged with multiple felonies. This came as a huge surprise. Luckily, I was able to keep my wits and lawyer up instead of speaking with the detective. For $13,000, which completely wiped my savings, I was able to retain a criminal defense attorney. However, it cost me everything, and I was unable to pay my bond. This resulted in me staying in jail for a total of 54 days. At a status hearing, my attorney presented video evidence of me gassing up my car 3 hours away from where the crimes took place, and I ended up having all my charges dismissed. When I finally got out, I learned that I had lost my job, was in the process of being evicted, and my son was in the state's care. His mother is a heroin addict, and I haven't spoken to my own parents in nearly 15 years. They wouldn't let him go to my girlfriend because they didn't consider her family. Since my release, I've learned that I can't sue the police, and no one gives a shit that I was locked up for 54 days because the detective did poor investigation work. I've gone to the local press about this and was told that what happened to me happens quite a bit. They took down my info but never followed up. So what I did was create a website sharing my story. I also uploaded the police report and some other documents from the discovery. Literally, the only reason why I was arrested was because an eyewitness said they saw me. If the detective had done his job, he could have verified that I wasn't even in town on the day the crimes took place. This is what pisses me off the most. My life was ruined because of a lazy employee. My website is now ranked number 2 on the first page of search results when you type in my town's name. I live in a touristy town and we attract a lot of visitors over the summer. My web traffic has more than quadrupled, and apparently it's gotten someone high up's attention. I received a cease and desist letter recently, which I showed to my attorney. He said sharing my experience online isn't illegal and that everything I had stated was a fact or my own opinion, protecting me from a defamation lawsuit. Yesterday I received a visit from 2 officers and the detective who had arrested me. He apologized, stating mistakes can happen. They then talked to me about my website and asked if I could remove it. I said I would delete it on the condition that the detective leave his job and never do police work again. Suffice to say that isn't happening. After the visit I received, I'm more pissed off that the only reason the detective apologized to me was to get me to take down my website. I don't plan to, and the only one supporting this is my girlfriend. My friends think I'm being spiteful and have suggested that I just delete it. About a week after my post, I planted a wall of blackberries and raspberries at the 2 sides of my garden facing the driveway, about 30 centimeters from the edge, so no overhanging branches. On the other side of the berry wall I planted lots stuff like strawberries and tomatoes. To reach the tomatoes and strawberries from the driveway you have either go through the fruit bushes or walk up to my house. walk about 2 m along the side of the house and my windows, and then walk into my actual garden. Not something you do by mistake. For about 2 weeks it was somewhat quiet, but I still found the kids on my driveway every single days. As far as I know, they did not enter the garden, and I hadn't noticed them walking around my house anymore. So I figured the bushes were working. About 1 week ago, berry season started, and my bushes are now full of raspberries, and there's lots of strawberries as well. The neighbors noticed. First I caught the boys picking and eating raspberries, so I told them off and dropped them off at home, told their mom I caught them stealing. That's how I see it, even though it's fruit, and that I'd call the cops next time. She huffed and told me to grow up, but took the boys inside anyway. After that it was quiet up until yesterday afternoon, when I went out for a while and found the dad and his 2 sons right in the middle of my garden when I returned, clearing my bushes and plants. I didn't even confront them, just called the cops from a distance as they hadn't noticed me yet, and started filming them after making the call. Luckily 2 cops showed up after 10 minutes or so, and they confronted the neighbor as they were still picking berries. They told them they were trespassing and that the berry picking was in fact considered stealing, and that I could press charges. For the first time I noticed a bit of fear in my neighbor. He was having trouble finding his words and kept looking back at his house, I guess hoping his wife would show to yell at the cops. They all went inside with the cops, so I just went home as well. After a while the cops came by and asked me if I wanted to press charges. I asked them if they felt like they scared the neighbor enough to stay away. I got a small smile and yes, about him, but the wife had just kept shouting at them and her husband about the little living next door. I told them no for now, asked them if I'd be allowed to get an extra camera set up on the wall between my garden and the road, to cover the entire front garden plus driveway. They said that's allowed as long as it's on my side of the wall. So, now I'm getting an extra camera installed. One neighbor knows I'm done messing around, but his wife isn't there yet, and if I ever catch any of them again, the cops will be called and possible charges will follow.